Good afternoon, Mr. Callan. My name is Evan Feinauer. I'm staff attorney with Clean Wisconsin. I'm going to have a few questions for you.
Good afternoon.
So I'd like to start by talking about blasting as our first topic. And in particular, asking you some questions about the blasting conditions as they appear in the permit. So if we could please pull up those permit conditions. Yeah, I'm sorry, you have to get out your glasses again. So these are conditions 123 through 127. And let's just start by looking at the first one there, 123. So please review that and let me know when you're ready to talk about 123.
I am.
Okay. Now, Enbridge is proposing to blast in places where it finds the depth to bedrock is such that pipeline installation requires removal of that bedrock, correct?
And other means aren't amenable to trenching construction.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's basically the only places they're proposing to blast, correct?
I think that's what was presented in the application and plans. As I think stated earlier, there aren't, totality of information regarding all of the geologic features in the project area, so there theoretically could be more.
Okay. But just to be clear, it's not DNR's concern that Enbridge is just going to go around blasting for the fun of it, right?
I would not expect.
Okay. And were you here for Mr. David Saber's testimony?
I was not.
Okay. I've noted you in the back, but I haven't memorized which days you were here.
Fair.
Okay, so given what I believe I just heard you say is that there's going to be some variability in the field at the time of construction, some blasting sites won't be known until during construction. Is that fair?
That's my understanding. Correct.
So, and those assessments will be made by Enbridge, correct?
Regarding whether or not to blast, that's my understanding.
And DNR is not going to be out there in real time checking to see does this site really need blasting or not, right?
Independent monitors would be in the field on a daily basis. Whether or not they have the expertise to evaluate the need for blasting is unlikely.
So ultimately, where blasting does and does not occur will be up to Enbridge's field assessments during construction.
Right, based on their plan and the geologic conditions, right?
And I think I heard you say this earlier, but you agree that there's sites that aren't currently listed as candidate blasting sites where blasting may nonetheless occur, correct?
It's possible.
If a wetland or water body that isn't currently listed as a potential blasting site or candidate blasting site, I believe to use their nomenclature, is blasted, is that an alteration of the project in your mind?
If it's not included with the existing plans and there isn't a mechanism to account for it through the existing plans, that if that activity requires modification of the permit, then we would have to go through that process.
I'd like to turn your attention now to the next condition, 124.
Mm-hmm.
And just let me know when you've had a chance to review that.
Okay.
And the blasting plan, that refers to the general blasting plan that's appended to the environmental construction plan, is that correct?
I think that's the name of it, yep.
Okay. And this isn't a plan that DNR wrote, correct?
That was part of the application.
Okay, and you reviewed it?
Yep.
Okay. But would I be correct in assuming that you yourself, you're not a blaster, right?
That would be 100% correct.
Okay. And DNR doesn't have a licensed blaster on staff that you could confer with, is that right?
I'm not aware of a DNR employee that has expertise in blasting.
Thank you. And the general blasting plan submitted as part of the ECP, that isn't intended to comply with any DNR environmental standards, correct?
Not directly, no, but it would be required to comply with the conditions of an authorization as it relates to the regulated resources. Wetlands.
Could you explain what you mean by
waterways.
that?
Sorry, yep. Blasting activity in waterway we would consider that a regulated activity, similar to dredging, just a different mechanism to remove that material, or prepare it for removal. And I would, I think it's not, there's no explicit language in the wetland regulations or waterway regulations that I'm aware of related to blasting activity per se.
Okay. And I think I might have been asking the inverse. I'm asking whether or not the blasting plan references any DNR environmental standards.
Not that I'm aware of.
Does it incorporate any environmental standards at all?
I would have to look back at it. It's been a while since I looked at the blasting plan.
Well, we can look at it. Let's pull up Exhibit 630. And just start by going to page 478, if you could, Attorney Corey. It should be the cover sheet. Okay, so do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, and what is this?
It is Exhibit 630, the general blasting plan.
Okay. And if we could please scroll down a few pages to 482, Bates number. And then look at the purpose of blasting plan, section 5, please. And I'm interested here in the second paragraph of this section. If you could just acquaint yourself with it, let me know when you're ready. I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, now there's a series of regulations that appear in this paragraph, correct?
There are.
Okay, and do you recognize that some of these are federal regulations?
I do.
These are federal regulations relating to safety, correct?
I don't know I'm not familiar
You're
with
not
those federal regulations.
Fair enough. Do you recognize any state standards that appear in this paragraph?
I see a reference to the Department of Safety and Professional Services, SPS 305.
Okay. Do you know if that's an environmental regulation?
I am not familiar with that regulation.
But you do know what the acronym SPS stands for in that regulation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and what is that?
Safety and Professional Services, I believe.
Okay. And that is, we've negotiated over acronyms for United States, if it's DSPS or DSPS, but you know what DSPS is?
It's a state agency.
Thank you. Is it your understanding that DSPS would require Enbridge's blasters to employ practices to protect waterways?
It's not my understanding.
Okay, so if we could please look back at the permit at this time and return our attention to condition 124. So having said all that, how would DNR ensure that Enbridge complies with condition 124?
So if there's a deviation that we're aware of or become aware of, I guess that would be the determination as to whether or not that condition is being followed. I think part of the reason for including condition 124 was to confirm that there is a blasting plan that lays out how the project proponent intends to utilize that mechanism, and that it references that plan.
Are you familiar with the general blasting plan's requirement that site-specific plans be created?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And the general blasting plan, as we were discussing, that's part of the ECP in this matter?
It is.
When the site-specific plans are created, do those become enforceable parts of the permit?
So, if a site-specific blasting plan, is a component of an updated ECP or, other condition or requirement referenced in the permit, then it would be subject to, the requirements of the permit.
But there's no requirement in these permit conditions or in the blasting plan itself that requires Enbridge to submit the site-specific plans before blasts occur, correct?
I'm not 100% certain.
Do you know whether there's any requirement that DNR approve site-specific plans before blasts occur?
I would have to look.
Fair enough, there's a lot of paper in this case. We can turn our attention to the next condition, 125. So just please again review it and let me know when you're ready to discuss it.
Okay.
What is your understanding of how Enbridge would know whether pre-construction hydrology was restored immediately after installation of the pipe in the areas of blasting?
There would likely be indications as they backfill a trench. So if you're excavating material, whether it was scooped out, hammered, hydraulically hammered, or blasted, if that area has existing, it intercepts the existing groundwater, then as we've heard, that groundwater would likely end up in the excavated area. And part of the process of installing the pipe would require that in order to facilitate the safe construction is to de-water that trench during the construction. And then once they have the pipe installed and inspected, they don't need to continue to de-water. And so if they stop removing water from the trench, then that would be one indication that hydrology is continuing to, be restored. Additional measures, especially in waterways or wetlands, would be to look for significant changes that would potentially be apparent as part of installation or after installation.
Okay, while we're talking about hydrological issues, I would like to ask about permit condition 225. And again, just let me know when you've had a chance to look at condition 225.
Yep.
Okay, so this condition refers to avoiding adverse changes to oil and hydrology, correct?
It does.
So you would need to know what an adverse change is to determine whether this condition's been complied with. Is that fair?
Fair.
And this condition says, it finishes by saying as specified in the ECP, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What is your understanding of how the ECP specifies what an adverse change to oil and hydrology is?
My recollection is that it would result in some type of potential effect on those regulated resources. So hydrology not returning to the root zone in wetlands, or constriction of a wetland boundary post-construction, or a lack of wetland indicators through direct monitoring wells or secondary indicators.
Okay, so an adverse change, that implies a change from some kind of baseline, right? Or I suppose you prefer pre-construction conditions.
Pre-existing, sure.
Pre-construction conditions. And how is the pre-construction hydrology being characterized for this project?
Yeah, so in several ways. Part of it was through the delineation reports where they characterize either primary or secondary indicators of hydrology. Part of it was through geotechnical analysis where they looked at elevations of groundwater, the water table, and or potential artesian or confined aquifer conditions. So a couple of ways.
Okay, and those, sorry, scratch that. You just referenced, or I believe I heard you reference hydrologic, primary and secondary hydrologic indicators, correct?
For the delineation, correct.
Okay. So those would be the delineations that were done in 2019 and 2020?
Correct. I'm not sure if they collected additional hydrology or hydrologic indicators in any of the subsequent field investigations that they did when they were mainly focused on vegetation.
Okay.
I'd have to look.
So setting aside the modest number of wetlands that are being directly monitored with wells, to track an adverse change would be to compare post-construction observations of hydrologic indicators with those delineations from 2019 and 2020?
That's one mechanism. Right? And if there's a significant direct impact that changes immediately, that could be another. So we looked at the previous condition where talked about blasting, and if there was an immediate change to hydrology, as I think I heard during earlier testimony, where blasting would result in significant hydrologic impacts, like I would expect that would likely occur immediately. And if that were the case, that might be another scenario where there's some issue going on as a result of blasting.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to turn to sheet piling. So I think we're close to the condition I'm asking about here. Oh, 221, it's already on the page, good. So if you could look at 221, that's the next condition I have questions about.
Okay.
So my first question concerns the reference to trench boxes in this condition. Would it be fair to say that the reason the department is requiring consideration of trench boxes but not their actual use is because in many instances they can't be used?
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
How would you characterize it?
So excavation and the stability of the excavated areas to both maintain that open excavation and promote safety. I have seen trench boxes utilized on utility projects that hold that excavation open. I don't know that it would be applicable in all circumstances for a project like this, but I have seen that utilized in other projects.
Do you know whether the ECP discusses the use of trench boxes at all?
I don't recall.
Would you be surprised if it doesn't mention them at all?
Not necessarily.
Just one question on this. Is DNR concerned that Enbridge would knowingly drive sheet pilings into artesian aquifers?
No.
My next questions, I was going up earlier in the permit to condition number 22. Now, Enbridge isn't required to get DNR's approval as to the selection of construction equipment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so during construction, Enbridge is going to decide what construction equipment it uses. Is that fair?
In conjunction with their contractor.
Condition 218 is the next one I have a question about. So this condition is attempting to address impacts that would be caused by equipment traveling through wetlands, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's because the more equipment travel you have, the more impacts you might have from things like rutting and compaction and that kind of thing, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, and more equipment travel could also mean you have an invasive species hitch a ride and cause invasives to spread. Is that fair?
If there is a break in the protocol for the environmental construction plan and the conditions of the permit, yep.
Okay, but there's nothing in this permit condition itself that minimizes the actual amount of travel up and down the corridor, right?
It is not quantitative.
And instead says that travel shall be minimized as specified in the ECP, correct?
Correct.
What is your understanding of how the ECP minimizes equipment travel?
It's, if I recall correctly, it's looking at ensuring that activities, including construction, progress in a planned manner so that there reduces the need to pull equipment out to get other equipment in. So they're planning ahead to ensure that they're being efficient and effective with their equipment use and activities in wetlands.
Thank you. I have some question about the use of construction mats, which brings our attention to condition 236 at this time.
Okay.
So this condition says that when Enbridge has vehicles and equipment in wetlands, they need to go on mats basically unless there's stable ground conditions, right?
Stable ground conditions that will not result in impacts like soil rutting, mixing, or compaction.
Thank you. Stable ground conditions, that can include frozen ground, right?
It can.
Or if the ground is particularly dry, is that right?
There are circumstances where wetlands are actually dry. Yep.
And for the most part, that's basically what stable land conditions refers to.
For the most part.
So if we could then just look to the next condition, 237. Just review 237 and similarly just let me know when you're ready to discuss it.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a few different things happening here, right? There's an opening statement that mats be removed as soon as possible, right?
Yep.
And then it says that they cannot be removed until final cleanup of a pipeline segment is complete and heavy equipment will no longer be working within that particular segment, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then it finishes by saying mats shall be left alone no longer than necessary during the growing season, right?
It does.
So there's kind of three sort of elements to this condition. Now, would I be correct in stating that the reason that there's these durational limitations is because limiting the duration of the use of mats can then help alleviate concerns about soil compaction and rutting and those other environmental impacts?
Can we pull it up again? Just
Sure.
so I can see it when we're talking about it. Thank you. So, if used properly and effectively, matting is a protective measure. And there are circumstances where we've had to deal with problems that result from maybe not the best approach on mat uses where a project may be substantially complete, but mats aren't removed because they haven't coordinated with the contractor to remove them, and so they're left out there for no particular reason. That would not be a benefit to the resource. So it's trying to get at circumstances where it's appropriate to use them for protective means, but not to allow them to have unintended impacts.
Okay, and the reason that there's this reference at the end of this condition to the growing season is because mats can also have adverse impacts on vegetation, correct?
Placement of mats would prevent the vegetation from growing or thriving.
Okay. Now, during the growing season, the ground is not frozen, correct?
Generally not.
Okay. In the growing season is also a wetter part of the year, correct?
I would say that it's in general, yep, conditions are, you get more rain and precipitation during the growing season. as opposed to concerns regarding runoff with snow in the winter.
So unfortunately, the dry or frozen conditions that would potentially avoid the need to use mats are unlikely to be present during the growing season, correct?
I wouldn't say that. I would say frozen is unlikely, but I wouldn't say dry is necessarily unlikely.
What's your understanding of how long project construction would take?
Several months. There's several of the longer HDD crossings are going to take extensive amount of time, several weeks or months, I think. I don't recall the schedule, and I don't know if I've seen a Gantt chart regarding schedule from clearing to mainline construction to restoration.
Okay, and do you know when in the process construction mats will be installed?
They would generally be installed after clearing.
And as this condition indicates, they're required to be there through final cleanup, right?
Yeah, because of the use of equipment that would need to be working from those mats.
Okay, so if they're there from vegetative clearing through final cleanup, that's a significant chunk of the overall construction process, correct?
Yes.
And if they cleared the vegetation early in the year and then left them there through final cleanup, they could be there for potentially the entirety of the growing season, correct?
I don't know the schedule, but I have seen projects where that occurs.
Well, that's my last question about construction mats.
Okay.
I have a few questions about springs. So, just to keep things simple, springs, these are places where the groundwater comes up to the surface and becomes surface water.
Yeah, I would characterize it as flowing water, groundwater that makes its way to the surface and then tends to flow along the ground surface.
And do you consider seeps to be a type of spring?
Maybe a subset where it may not flow as a high of a rate and may not create surface flow.
Okay, and springs are important to protect because they can produce valuable wetlands and create habitat and other environmental things that we like, correct?
They're part of the functional values of wetlands, sure.
Okay, so now I'd like to look at permit condition number 28, please.
Okay.
I want to ask about the use of the phrase cannot be avoided by construction in this condition. So this permit permits construction through a particular route, correct?
It does.
Okay. So they can't really deviate from the route at this point without coming in and having a substantial modification of the permit or other approvals, correct?
A deviation from the route would require an amendment, right?
Okay. So if there is a spring along the right-of-way, construction will presumably then proceed through that spring, correct?
So I would also characterize construction as not just trenching and installing a pipeline, but access and matting.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a circumstance where matting can be shifted to avoid a spring. I would consider that compliant with the requirements of this condition.
Okay, so that would be changing the shape and size of the project workspace then?
No, it would still be within the same project footprint, same construction right away, but if the mat happens to be planned, and then when they are in the field staking and clearing encounter a spring, maybe their intent was to put the mat road at a certain location and they shifted over to avoid that spring. So that could still be completed within the right of way.
Okay, but that's just one hypothetical situation of a project alteration, correct?
I'm not claiming to explain all hypotheticals associated with construction.
And this condition says that the springs, any impacted springs would need to be restored as required by the department, correct?
It does.
Okay, so there's no currently existing spring restoration plan then, correct?
I think there's language in the environmental protection plan that talks about restoring those areas, but I don't recall if it's detailed or specific, and obviously the requirement would be if it's either a known site now or it's discovered as a part of staking and clearing, that those areas would be restored.
I want to ask a quick question about finding the fact pertaining to the risk of an oil spill. So this is finding the fact 62B in the permit. So, sorry, you should give yourself a chance to familiarize yourself with the subcondition B. Okay. So there's a number that appears in the second line of this finding of fact, correct?
Right,
And that number is 0.00317.
it is.
Okay. So this is the number that was produced by Enbridge's DNR, correct?
I believe this number came from the environmental impact statement.
Okay, well let's look at that, so then we can just have a clear record on this. Let's pull up Exhibit 807 and turn our attention to page 679. And maybe to zoom in on the table there, Corey. So you can see that. Okay, so do you see, let's see here, on the bottom part of this, the top left box that has a number in it, do you see the number 00317?
I do.
Okay, and that's the same number we were looking at in the permit, correct?
It is.
Okay. And then you see underneath the table where it identifies the source of this?
I do.
Okay, and that says DNB?
It does.
Okay. Were you here when your colleague, Mr. Watermullen, testified?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear him refer to the DNB analysis as a black box?
I think I heard him use the term. I guess I would say my understanding is that it was the algorithms or whatever the process was to evaluate that.
Okay. So would it be fair to say this process of generating this number wasn't something that you were intimately involved with?
I was not.
Okay. Are you aware that DNR did its own analysis of a probability of failure?
I understand that our team worked with a consultant on that. Yep.
Okay. And it got a number that was some 20 times larger?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Okay, I think I have just one line of questioning left. I would like to turn our attention now to permit condition 205. Just let me know when you've had a chance to review it.
I'm ready.
Okay. Now, a condition like this is pretty standard in wetland and waterways permits, correct?
I would say that's fair.
And because that's just how permits work, right? They authorize the impacts named in the permits, but not other impacts?
They're restricted to a certain quantity.
So this condition prohibits impacts to entire wetlands that aren't listed in that impact table, correct?
I would say entire wetlands or portions thereof.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and we could scroll down to condition 212, please.
I'm ready.
Okay, and you discussed this earlier, so maybe we're just clarifying some of that earlier testimony, but I want to ask what your understanding of how the term identified works in this sentence. So this is a linear project. Enbridge is going to be conducting construction in a linear fashion. So given that, to identify wetlands that aren't part of the existing wetland and water body table, before they're impacted, they would need somebody out there kind of at the tip of the construction space to identify those wetlands, correct?
Anytime pre-construction, correct.
Okay. Fair. This condition doesn't itself identify any timeline, though, for when that notification has to happen, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if construction's happened and Enbridge is out in the field and the IAMs that we've been discussing are out there and all the folks that are going to be out there are out there, and somebody identifies a wetland that's not in permit table 1 that would be impacted by construction, is Enbridge obligated by this permit to stop work?
They're obligated not to impact that resource without either an exemption, general permit, or an individual permit, and the mechanism would probably be an amendment to the permit.
So is that yes?
So I'm not trying to be evasive. So there are mechanisms for authorizing wetland discharge. So the current mechanism for this project is an individual permit. And if there's a proposal to impact additional wetlands that are not authorized by this permit, they could seek an amendment to cover that additional impact, or they could avoid it, or they could avoid it until they have separate coverage for that discrete area, depending on the circumstances.
Okay, and so avoiding it in this context would mean going around that wetland?
The regulated activity is a discharge, so no discharge to that wetland.
Okay, let's look then at condition 234.
Right.
Okay. So as you testified earlier, there's a lot of wetland and waterway permits that get issued by DNR, correct?
There are.
Okay, and I think you gave some huge number, I wrote it down, of permits that you've worked on. It was 5,000 or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that in contrast with the permit condition that we looked at earlier, that a condition like this is less likely to appear in wetland permits?
I believe that this condition has been incorporated into several long linear utility projects.
Okay. Could you give some examples if you recall?
Yeah, I believe it was included in some of the recent ATC projects, and part of the reason is not the expectation that wetland impacts will increase, it's that wetland impacts will decrease. So they're authorized for a certain amount of impact associated with the proposed plan. And if there are, opportunities in the field based on construction that they did not anticipate to avoid certain things, then we need to know the final number of what that is. Obviously, as I stated earlier, if there's a proposed wetland impact that isn't included in permit table 1 that they are now proposing, they would need to cover that through an amendment to the permit or an additional authorization.
Okay. So it's your testimony that the reason that this condition is here because you're concerned about potentially overcounting wetland impacts?
Objection, I think that question mischaracterizes the testimony.
Well, I'm asking him if that's his testimony.
Did he say anything about a concern about that, or did he explain what the condition was purposed for?
Okay. I'll rephrase it to use the word purpose instead of concern.
That'll be fine.
Okay. So is it your testimony that the purpose of this condition is to capture potential overcounts of wetland impacts in wetland crossing table?
I would say that the purpose of this condition is to get an accurate assessment of impacted wetlands associated with the project.
No further questions.